Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about more pre-modern decks, more pre-modern tournaments. A little bit behind on this one, but this is for the pre-modern online monthly open for November, and we only have 14 decks instead of the 16, top 16, because I guess it's just getting uploaded or they were, just the deck were lost or something like that. But that's okay. 14 out of 16 is still pretty good. Still got some interesting stuff today, so let's get started. Okay, and this is basically just Parfait, and there's nothing really weird here. Again, we see some of the tech like Duress to interact with more spell-based decks, hate cards, right, that people want to play. I think stuff like Aura Silence is pretty disruptive, all sorts of stuff like that. But in general, again, a fairly typical Parfait list, and not much to see here. They do have the Zur's Weirding tech, of course. Who doesn't like that? And for the Oath Chaos, we have Trike and Ancestors Chosen. Again, pretty standard all around. All right, and now we have more of the mono blue Stifle Knot deck. Again, nothing too weird here, same old stuff, just mono blue to take advantage of things like Gush, Daze, Foil, all this kind of stuff, which is pretty strong. Again, not the version I prefer, right? But again, I think I have a different sort of mindset when playing these decks. But that being said, definitely a pretty sweet deck. All right, and now we basically have a white weenie deck, and these of course these can look like kind of anything really. But the one weird thing we have, or maybe not that weird, because I've always tried to make this card work, but there's just not really that many good ETB creatures. Fleetfoot Panther. This is definitely an interesting one. I mean, I guess you can get different um, decks, like if they have a lot of creatures, aggro decks, you can get them in combat. You can save your own guy from removal. It's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet, but generally this deck is just relying on the same old white weenie stuff of like Whipcorder, Silver Knight, Savannah Lions, Mother Runes, that kind of stuff. Although we don't have Ramosian Sergeant in here, which I think is a big miss. I really like Ramosian Sergeant. Just gives you like just all this extra card advantage. Being able to fetch out multiple Whipcorders is pretty great. Swords, Wax and Wane, good disruption. You get some pump spells with obviously Wax, again, as a pump spell. Rancor itself, and Armageddon as very good against a lot of the board control decks, so think something like Slide, or of course the Rock as well. So yeah, a lot of really cool stuff here, pretty typical sideboard, but yeah, definitely always like seeing Fleetfoot Panther. Haven't really made it work, so to speak, or taken full advantage of it, but it's a sweet card regardless. Okay, and this is basically the Tide decks, and the only thing we got here that's a little weird is Scour. I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to do here, what specific enchantment they're particularly scared of, where they're like, I need to get rid of all of these enchantments from their deck. Yeah, that's a new one. That's interesting. But yeah, so I mean, I guess it doesn't really work on any of the Parallax Tide, right? It doesn't really work on that. And you're not super scared of something like Oath. So I'm not exactly sure what this is for off the top of my head, but that's okay. No biggie. But other than that, this is a fairly typical Tide control list. All right, and now we have the Rock, except this version of the Rock has some pretty sneaky, sweet stuff. We got Natural Order, right? So we're not getting Craterhoof Behemoths or Prejadis, but we are getting things like Verdant Force. Oh boy, that's pretty spicy. Definitely, from the days of Jamie Wakefield, this is a pretty strong card, pretty powerful. Can certainly get tons and tons of uh, little dudes in play, just pretty sweet. And of course, in the sideboard, we have the Obviously, greatest card ever printed, Fungal Shambler. It's a fungus beast. This thing's amazing. Obviously, this is a good card to natural order into, and it's much better versus um, the spell-based decks where you don't really care too much about the board or they don't play enough removal, and this will give you the ability to it makes them discard, you draw a card obviously, and it's a pretty solid clock. So that's pretty sweet, pretty sweet. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Fungal Shambler here. I like the natural order package here. Again, it's a little clunky, but I mean the rock is already pretty clunky in general. But yeah, pretty sweet stuff. All right, and we have L's, and this is just doing L stuff. Um, the only thing might be a little bit different. I believe Winter Orb is not always seen in this deck in the sideboard, off the top of my head. So yeah, there you go. But other than that, it's pretty typical. Got an extra masked core in there, but pretty much all of the same usual suspects here for an L's survival deck. Okay, and what do we have here? Why, we have Replenish. Of course, I'm always a huge fan of Replenish. I just like the deck. Definitely very drawn to it. Liked it back in the day. Still pretty great. Still pretty great. Got all sorts of good stuff here. This is pretty typical, sort of like the Flores-ish version where he plays plows and counter spells to pivot to a more combo control role post board. So that's pretty sweet. Even things like Exalted Angel, which of course dodge Graveyard Hate, pretty nice. So yeah, this is basically just same old Replenish stuff that we've been seeing for quite some time. Okay, and now we have Parfait by K-Run, of course, noted Parfait master and or creator or whatever. Uh, we got Anurid Brushhopper. This card, of course, is sweet. It's seen some amount of play already. It's certainly a known quantity. You know, like the Balancing Teams decks always play Anurid Brushhopper. This card's pretty sweet. Does a lot of cool stuff. Uh, Very difficult to kill. Obviously plays pretty well with land tax, giving you something to do with those extra lands. So that's pretty neat. I'm not sure how well this worked, but I'm a big fan of Vanguard Brushhopper, especially when it came out. Hey, what can I say? I just like, the green-white 3-mana 3/4s, so. And of course we have Harmonic Convergence. This card's pretty sweet. It's just another way to destroy all enchantments without triggering Karmic Justice. And you put them all on top of their libraries, and they're very sad, because then they're just not drawing blank, but definitely can mess up their draws, can screw things up there, and obviously, yeah, not hitting Karmic Justice is a pretty big thing, pretty important in the mirror. But yeah, pretty sweet deck, nothing too wonky here. Okay, and now we have blue-white control, and nothing is weird here. This is all normal. So it's just land still, basically, well, tide still. Well, not really tide still, it's just the tide control deck, because there's no standstill here. But we got Parallax Tide, and, that combo, Seal of Cleansing, all that good stuff. Got an Veneral's Disc, got all sorts of sweet stuff, Cunning Wish sideboard. Yeah, pretty much all the guys you really like. Oh, I guess there are the Lonely Sandbar cycling lands, which are sort of unconventional. That's a pretty cool thing to see, especially if you're playing like 27 lands. Having the extra lands just be cycling lands is really great, because you can just cycle them late game and you don't need them, or when you're looking for particular cards. So that's always cool. Big fan of cycling lands. Pretty neat. Okay, and now we have just a typical slide list. But I just want to draw attention to Akroma's Vengeance. This is again sometimes played, and the card is sweet. Why is it sweet? Because it reminds me of playing this deck back in 2004. So that's why it's sweet. I'm a huge fan of Akroma's Vengeance. I'm just big fan of this deck, super fun. This deck doesn't play enough Fledgling Dragons. Maybe I should just start slamming like a playset of Fledgling Dragons in this deck. That was always fun. But yeah, anyways, pretty typical stock list. I'm a big fan of the Chroma's Vengeance. They help clean up all sorts of crap. Um, Although this one doesn't have Argivian Fine, which is really important versus hate cards. But other than that, pretty cool stuff. Okay, and this is Mono Blue Stiflenaught. Yeah, this one I think has some extra boomerangs in the main deck, but other than that, this is a fairly stock list, and not too much to see here. All right, now we have basically a red-green sort of survival aggro list. Of course, with our good friend Blastoderm, obviously pretty sweet card, especially with Anger, being able to deal a full 20 by itself, and then you can always recur it with Genesis, post board, you know. So yeah, Blastoderm, very sweet, very powerful card, as well as the main deck Call the Herd. Call the Herd not as utilized as you might think, or the card should be utilized in Premodern. Just doesn't see that much play, doesn't always fit in a ton of different decks. But it is very sweet. Call the Herd, super awesome. Like, again, it's card advantage, it blocks stuff, it eats bolts, and it just basically does everything you want it to do. But yeah, I mean, we have the typical survival stuff, you know, got the Angers and Masticores and stuff like that. We got the Manadorks. We also have, you know, some aggro stuff like Sky Shroud Elite. Again, random Deranged Hermit. Again, that's a pretty sweet card. Of course, got a full playset of Cradle in here. Got a couple Rancor. Again, this guy's very hardcore about playing an aggro game plan. Obviously, Rancor doesn't work with Blastoderm, but you can, of course, always Rancor up your Llanowar Elves and things like that, or your Bop or something. Sideboard's just got typical red-green cards that you want to play in a red-green deck, as well as survival stuff, you know, like Goblin Sharpshooter, Genesis, Spore Frog, Spike Feeder, Call of the Claw, Uktabi Orangutan, Druid Lyrist, that kind of thing, Hull Breach. So yeah, pretty sweet deck, lots of stuff going on, but nothing you're gonna be too confused about. Definitely pretty cool. The only thing that gives me pause is the one River Boa. I'm not exactly sure what the one River Boa is supposed to do. It's like a survival target. I'm not super excited to play it. I mean, this feels like more like an actual just stompy card where you're just looking for like a good dude to Rancor up, but this feels a bit random here. But other than that, pretty cool stuff. All right, and now we have we got some Stiflenaught, and we got some weird stuff. Okay, long-term plans. This is a card some of you may or may not know. I've played it quite a bit in Commander. Definitely a huge fan of long-term plans. All my mono blue decks, I'm like, oh yeah, dude, long-term plans, baby. I'm gonna get that card, and you know, 100, you know, like 20 minutes from now, I'm gonna get that card. I'm gonna get it, and you guys are all gonna lose. But yeah, long-term plans, very sweet. About the only sort of tutor you can really play in mono blue that gets you anything. A little slow though, a little slow. And then we have Alexi's Cloak. This is an interesting sideboard card. It's pretty good against removal, you know, on your Dreadnought. Pretty good there, but it's like pretty awkward just in general, like to draw it and not have a Dreadnought, so it's just sitting in your hand doing nothing. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of this card. Like, I mean, this is just, I mean, just playing more cards there where you're just likely to get, you know, 2-for-1 in a deck whose main combo is 2-for-1ing yourself. Not a huge fan of that, but it is interesting tech, and I guess it is something to consider. But yeah, so yeah, keep an eye out for Alexi's Cloak in the future or something, so I guess you don't get blown out. All right, and number one, we got Stasis, and it's ugly new bordered Stasis, so I guess a lot of the cards are new bordered. I don't know. Anyways, this list has a couple weird things. First off, 3 Forsaken City has got to be like 100,000,000% wrong. I don't really know why people play Bobble just randomly in decks. Like, what's the point? Like, this, again, all the criticisms of Bobble just that I've had are apply here, right? This card just doesn't make a ton of sense when you're not really doing much with it. Like it's not really a 56 card deck. There are other things going on. So yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of Bobble here, but we do have some really interesting stuff. So first off, we have Pendril Mist. This is a pretty sweet sideboard card against aggressive decks, especially when you don't have stasis. You can really slow them down quite a bit. You know, if they have multiple creatures, they have to pay for it, and obviously with stasis out, it's basically like a permanent Wrath of God, more or less. So that's pretty cool. Brain Freeze, again, this is very sweet for milling people out. Although generally you're pretty good in the control mirror where they'll have like a bunch of dead removal and you won't. So maybe this is for something like a different sort of style of board control deck. Think of like Parfait, might be for something like that. And then we have the very, 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 very out of place looking Stroke of Genius. I don't know how Stroke is going to be very good in your Stasis deck, but you know, I mean, maybe there's some sort of play pattern where it's like, yeah, let my Stasis die, and then end of your turn I draw a bunch of cards. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure. There's a lot going on here that I'm just like, just not a big fan of. A little confused. But other than that, this guy did get it first, so hey, maybe there's something going on there that I'm not seeing. And sideboard is pretty typical stuff: Felden's Cane, Chill, Curse Totem, Annul, Black Vice, Mana Short, etc., etc. So yeah, there you go. But yeah, that's basically it. That's it, guys. There's not much else to talk about. Again, we're 2 decks short. But that's okay. But a lot of really cool stuff, really interesting tech. As always, always new interesting tech. You know, even for me, I've seen all these lists about a trillion, zillion, million times. But real cool stuff, some real cool stuff. So that's it for today, guys. So thanks for stopping by and have a great day.